Leticia Pozza and Paying Low, they are the head and co-founders of Odd Studio and Continentalist. Leticia and Paying are co-founders, as I mentioned, of data visualization and storytelling award-winning studios. Despite coming from different backgrounds and parts of the world, Brazil and Singapore, they share a passion for data and challenging the norms of running a company. Paying leads Continentalist and seeks to empower voices through cause-driven stories and change people's perceptions of Asia and its cultures. Leticia leads a diverse team at Odd, exploring novel ways to push the limits of technology, communicating scientific discoveries, and delivering impactful data projects and tools for organizations. Together, as underrepresented minorities in the industry, they actively use their voices towards creating a better workspace for all. So let's welcome the dynamic duo to the stage.
Can you hear me? All good?
Here?
Yeah.
Can you all hear us well? Good. Yay, great. How is everyone doing? Are we with a little bit of energy left before lunch? Yeah? Thank you. So, Paying, if someone read the title of our talk, what do you think they would assume it is about?
I think they would assume it's about feminism or feminist approaches towards data or handling of data, perhaps.
And do you think that they would be happy with the outcome?
Unfortunately, no. So if that's the talk you're expecting today, we're sorry to disappoint, but also not really. Women apologize way too much. And I won't apologize for your expectations of what a feminist talk looks like. That's a you problem. So this talk isn't gonna be, thank you. This talk is not going to be about feminist theories. It's 2024. We don't believe feminism is something that requires further introduction. Countless numbers of books and articles have been written about the importance of adopting a feminist approach towards data and its ethics.
But because we're nice, and because most importantly, we want to acknowledge the amazing people behind these stories, here are some of the titles we suggest you start with. So if you haven't read them, please do so. But while at the bottom line, like all of these stories, what they tell us is that inequalities exist.
As database designers and data practitioners, visualizing inequalities is often the heart of the work that we do. At least that is, for me, the case at Continentalist. We've read endless stories of rigged systems, systemic inequality, social injustice, over-surveillance of minorities, racial bias, and so on. For Odd and Continentalists, these are topics that pass our desk all the time. And if you have any familiarity with the work that you see on this video behind me, you will know well and intimately that inequalities are persistent and pervasive.
And many of these apply a concept that we have been discussing for a while now, which is called data humanism. So introduced by Georgia in 2017, it is, she pushes us to look on how understand and visualize data from a small, imperfect, and subjective perspective. But while our industry has evolved in humanizing the way we work with data, it still fails to question how much of our practices are also human.
In other words, we believe it's time for our conversations around data humanism to evolve beyond just visualizing data. Data humanism isn't something that is just practiced at the output level, but it's also about the process of execution. How often do we interrogate this concept in the proximities closest to us, in our workplaces, and even in our homes? As founders of data studios, these are questions that often haunt us. How do we walk the talk of our own practice, not just present about it at conferences like these or write articles, but incorporate it and actualize it into our work DNA? So perhaps we should start with this room. Leticia, is the DVS diverse?
This is not an attack on anyone, I would just like to say that. But looking at the state of the industry, published every year by the Data Society, we can say that there is a balanced representation of female and male individuals. We have about 4% of people that are self-described or non-binary, that don't consider themselves in the binary system. But when we look at leadership, we can say that there is a representation in leadership. So if we look at the stage, for example, from the 18 talks that we will have this week here, 8 of them are led by women, such as this one, and 2 of them have women in them. So if female representation, and we still lack a lot of data on self-described individuals here, and the trans community, and the LGBTQIA plus community, is not the challenge for the database society itself, this gives us a privileged opportunity to be at the forefront of change. An opportunity to shape the industry and be human-centered, not only in the execution of our work, but in our day-to-day practice.
So we want to start a conversation on how our work should look like. We believe that data studios, or really any design studio at this point, should fundamentally change the way they operate. And these are some of the lessons that we have learned in these past years of running our own companies. So if you're in a leadership position, or really in any position of power, do listen carefully today. But even if you aren't, we still feel that our talk will be relevant for you, because we believe everyone has a voice and an opportunity to use it for change.
But I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. We haven't even introduced who we are, and we're already trying to convert all of the crowd to feminism. So who are you?
Well, hi everyone. My name is Ping, and I'm the head and co-founder of Continentalist. We are a data-driven editorial studio and publication based in Singapore, dedicated to centering Asian voices and perspectives, countering Eurocentrism and Orientalism, and trying to decolonize our world a story at a time. What about you, Leticia?
Hi everyone, my name is Leticia. I am Brazilian. I am the CEO and co-founder of Odd Data and Design Studio. I lead a team of diverse people, both in Latin America and in Europe since last year, trying to find new ways to interact with data, and maybe just a little bit, try to change the world a little bit at a time.
Yeah, so Leticia and I met last year at Outlier at Porto, and we became instant friends. And despite being from very different parts of the world and coming from very different backgrounds, we had an uncanny number of similarities.
We're both very ambitious, we're both very driven, straightforward, very nerdy women. It's true. And when two women like that get together, there are some sparks and really heated arguments about things in life, which is not different for this talk. This was a lot of Zoom calls, I can definitely tell you that. But at the same time, when we put our minds and our hearts together, we really try to put our best and put on a show.
But even in our similarities, there are some slight differences and variations. For example, I've always thought of myself as a very outspoken individual. I've never hesitant to share my perspective or my opinion, and it has gotten me into some serious trouble in my life. But then I met Leticia, and then I realized I'm just an Asian level of outspokenness and not a Brazilian level of outspokenness.
On the other hand, actually, I really thought I was a workaholic, but then you can definitely say who is the person that memorized the script and not. And that put me on a whole different scale. At the same time, I don't know if you knew these, but Singaporeans apparently are the fastest walkers on Earth. I mean, who takes the time to measure that? It's my first question. But jokes aside, we have co-founded our separate studios. We have co-founded our separate studios in 17,000 kilometers apart with very different reasons.
So why did you start Odd, Leticia?
So I have more than 10 years and countless stories of both sexual and emotional harassment. I've never spoken about this on stage or anywhere, so it's the first time. Just to give you a couple of examples, the first internship I had, my boss would send me letters and emails about all of the things he wished to do with me. And when my internship ended, I went to talk to my university supervisor about why I quit, and he told me I couldn't handle my boss. And I really worry about this, and I really wonder who can actually and should handle their bosses, especially a 19-year-old woman, girl, trying to make her way into the market. And a second one is that later on, another boss, and I need to say he was a man, disclosed my sexuality to everyone without my consent to the whole company. He told everyone I was bisexual, and I was not even ready myself to say it out loud. It took me 10 years of therapy and lots of work to just be able to say it to my partners and to disclose it to other people. Harassment is something that really gets ingrained in you. You start to believe that the word that others put in you is the word that you have. And I honestly had just two options. I could either let that define me as a human being, or I could try to make something out of it or try to change it and try to make others never go through the same things that I went through. Because no one wants to work with someone that's broken, honestly. And I still get angry about these things. Sometimes it's really hard for me to talk about them. As you can see, I never shake. This is the first time I'm shaking. But 5 years ago, thank you. Don't make me cry. No. Then 5 years ago, we practiced this. 5 years ago, Dan Norman, an amazing woman from the Gates Foundation, gave me my first opportunity to sign a contract and a client. And that was the first time that I could choose my own things, my clients, and the opportunities, and maybe even make it my mission so others wouldn't have to go through the same things that I went through. So we made it and we baked it into, and turned those bad experiences into what we call Out's core values. And we made it our value and our priority to actually have diversity in our team, to be with and choose transparent relationships with clients and partners, and to speak up and be a voice for those underrepresented minorities and for people that may have been going through this as well. What about you, Ying?
Well, my journey is quite different. I started Constructive in 2017 when I was just 26 years old. At that point in time, I had worked for a couple of years in the museum industry and was quite jaded with how it worked, and it was also very Eurocentric. I had also learned these concepts at university as a history major that I want to kind of work on somehow, for example, combating Eurocentrism and Orientalism in the media space. And I had an opportunity with my co-founder to start something new. So Continentalist was founded on those values. But I really knew nothing about data or visual storytelling, much less running a company. And it was suddenly very daunting to realize that I was responsible for, people's livelihoods, their careers, their ambitions, and even their feelings. What was I doing being a boss? That's it. I want to clarify here that, sorry. I want to clarify here that I am as Leticia has pointed out, I'm quite a stereotypical Asian woman and an overachiever at that. So even as in my 4 years of undergraduate studies, I did 5 internships. But none of those internships really prepared me for what it means to be a manager or a boss. And I've learned the hard way that, I was wrong in some situations, and leadership does not look like this. So the notions that I had about what good leadership was wrong. And in that process, I lost talent in my team, but more importantly, I lost friends. And that was very painful to learn. And I've learned now that good leadership means also knowing the limits of your own knowledge and your own experiences. And genuine good leadership requires humility to listen and understand. These lessons have shaped me and Continentalist significantly. And while my journey is not quite the same as Leticia's, I've learned the importance of having shared core values in the workplace. And as a young woman, instead of trying to find all of the answers on my own, I collaborated with my team and leaned on their collective wisdom to find what are the values that align with ourselves, but also what we wanted to share with the world. And that was collaboration, authenticity, diversity, trust, and so on and so forth. But something very little people tell you about starting your own company is how incredibly lonely it can be, and also how isolating it can be, which is why when I met Leticia, it was truly life-changing and really important for me, because she impressed me with how unabashedly ambitious she is with what she wanted in her work and in her life. And it's been so inspiring for me to see another woman operate in this space with such confidence and surety.
I'm also older, so.
Yeah, that also.
Thank you. It is very difficult to find other people that feel the same. Most of the women that we know, for example, maybe even Valentina sometimes, go their own path alone. And probably because of some of the reasons that we have just discussed. So we found a lot of solidarity, a lot of sororidade, which is a little bit different in English, a lot of friendship in our conversations. And we discovered that we believe in similar things. But more than just running data studios that impress with their graphics, awards, or whatever it is, we really want to make a difference. And we really want to try to fight for a workspace that shares our values and beliefs, defending minorities and less represented communities. And of course, for cats. This was not planned, Eli, but cats are not. Cats are amazing. And just to prove that, here's a slide of all of our cats for you and for your entertainment. But we realized soon enough that maybe we ask ourselves questions that other people in our position, especially men in our position, don't really question themselves on things like, how can we resist the way things have always been done? And if we're going to be labeled as crazy, as dreamers, or whatever it is, why not resist the things and the way things have always been done and try to make it our own? So if we had to define it, Ying, what do you think is a feminist data studio?
Well, I'm not entirely sure, but from experience of having run our own practices for a while now, I can tell you what it's definitely not. And these are some concepts and ideas we must break away from. And the first is, it is not leaning in, as suggested by Sheryl Sandberg, former CEO of Facebook. As important it is for women to actively pursue our leadership goals and our career ambitions, leaning in ignores the structural and systemic inequalities that many women face all across the world. It is also not just a diversity, equity, inclusion policy, or simply representation. Ticking those boxes and numbers on ethnic balances, gender balances, or queerness in your company doesn't immediately make you feminist, inclusive, or diverse. It is also not a relentless pursuit of profit where business comes at the expense of individuals, thank you, because people should be allowed to face some serious life bumps, as Valentina shared earlier, along the way without having to worry about losing their jobs. And in an age of entrepreneurship where we have somehow normalized the concept of moving fast, breaking things, doing first, and then apologizing later, we must resist these concepts because they do not look after the process and what that means for every individual. It is also not about breaking glass ceilings, because how often do we expect women to be exceptional before they get to be recognized?
And we see that reflected in our own data. So as it has been already mentioned here, thank you very much. Viz had launched a project called, Odd Data and Design Studio launched a project called Viz had a couple of years ago. We really wanted to talk about who inspired you and who you recommended in this industry. It was updated yesterday, but more than that, we did a little bit extra thing. We also analyzed who recommends who. And here's the thing. Please keep in mind that we analyze this based on the information that's available online from people and based on their names, so there is margin for error. But what we do know here is that only 30% of men recommend other women, and women are less than 30% of the heads you see on Viz heads. And also, men tend to recommend other men 1.6 more times than they recommend women. But either further than that, for men to recommend women, they need to be truly exceptional. Most of the heads you see on these heads are recommended on average 6 times. But the women recommended by men are recommended on average 66 times. So they are the crop of the crop of the crop. They're like superstars in our area. And that is not the same for women. When women recommend men, they actually recommend men that are exceptional, but have like from 35 to 45 recommendation stops. So even in our industry and even in places, so even for men to recognize us in our territory means they are outliers. So a feminist data studio needs to create a space for all, not just the exceptional. And that means celebrating differences, and that creativity comes from being free in your truth and who you are. It means that inclusivity and diversity comes in many shapes, from background, age, religion, from sexual orientation, gender orientation. It is about creating a space where people can voice their worries and tell you when they don't feel comfortable and why they don't feel comfortable. It's about hearing people's stories and embracing them and helping them incorporate it and incorporate their drive into their work. And finally, it is looking for ways in which we can collaborate and cooperate, but more importantly, recognize the mistakes that we made in order to grow. So what we're going to talk about next aren't necessarily rules. These are more guidelines that we learn in our work that could work for other people, but do keep in mind that our studios are very particular and your companies may be too, so these need to be adapted for your own reality. And the first thing that we have learned is that we need to give people and give individuals voice and choice. So for us at Odd Studio, we believe that the base of our work is trust. We trust that people will do their best. We don't micromanage, but we set common objectives that can be negotiated.
At Continentalist, we practice collaborative decision-making. Every member of the team gets an equal say and opportunity on what they would like to work on and where the company should go. No one is forced to work on a project they do not like. And if nobody wants to work on a project, then it's a sign that it's a project that's not for us. But this is only possible when you have shared values in your team and everyone is aligned on those shared values, and there's also trust and solidarity. But you can't assume that this exists. You must bake it into your processes. In my team, we spend a lot of intentional time thinking about this together. We once spent an entire week in a design sprint co-designing our most important workflow, our editorial workflow. And in that process, our goals were to make it as inclusive as possible, as efficient as possible, and collect as many ideas as possible. It was very painful creating this process or this workflow, but I'm proud to share that even after 3 years, it achieves the goals that we set out for it. That said, it is still not perfect. We iterate and test it and adapt it all the time, especially when a new member joins the team.
At On, we avoid behind the doors conversation. There's even a joke around the team that we don't have anything to gossip about, and that's a problem. We try to use tools for people and resources where the team can collaborate, ask what they want, and ask for feedback from everyone, not depending on us because we're not even in the same time zone most of the time. So we don't have tons of meetings. We actually rely on resources and open feedback. And for us, inclusivity means everyone has the same rights, regardless of gender or company hierarchy, which is not limited to being a project leader. We proactively hire people that look and think differently. And for me, a huge red flag is when I look at a team's picture and all of them look the same. I have a really big problem with that. And when we need to, we discuss with the team if the policies implemented make them feel contemplated or not.
And for us at Continentalist, job descriptions are guidelines, not rules. Every individual is unique, and it's unrealistic to expect somebody to fit a job description or a job role to a T. So when a new member joins the team, we check in with where their comfort levels are with their skills and their experience. We also ask them if they would like to change the job descriptions in any way, or maybe change up the title to better reflect the role that they're playing and what they're comfortable with. And even for our existing team members, things don't stay the same. Not just today, it's not about promotions as we are a small team, but it's also about where they would like to grow their skills. So you may be a web developer who's really tired of coding today and you want to pick up design skills, and that's absolutely okay. But even if you've done all of that, you're not really done. It is very important to adapt, test, iterate, and repeat that process over and over again. One of the key things that we've learned the hard way is that never assume that your processes fit or your solutions fit everyone. This is especially for studios that are small and are very susceptible to change. You may have a wonderful team culture now, but that isn't always going to stay the same because culture is ever evolving and ever changing. And all it takes is one new member of the team to throw that off balance completely. Maintaining a good and open environment requires constant care and conversation. Everyone in the team has a shared responsibility in looking after it and also holding space for each other and learning to be open-minded and adaptive.
And a company can change a lot in a year. So just to give you a couple of examples, this is us a year ago. We were 10 people, but we really tried to maintain an equilibrium on who are the women and who are the men in positions of power. So as you can see, a year ago, we had 2 people that were women and 3 men. But this is us now. So we are 11 members. And although we have shifted a little bit of our team, and our team now is more present, is also present in Spain, you can see that we still have 3 women in positions of power. And we actually sponsor people that are not necessarily ready for that position, but would like to learn it and would like to improve their skills. And honestly, the queer thing kind of happened. We didn't even know that. And for me, it was a full circle when at lunch one day, everyone announced that they were part of the LGBTQIA+ community. And that was something that just, I think that when you are true to your values and when you are inclusive enough, people pick up on that and they're welcome and comfortable to talk about those things.
So when those values become part of your organization's DNA, you don't necessarily need a diversity, equity, inclusion policy to help you realize or remember what's important. Every individual in your team inhabits those values and they become a condition of being a part of the team. At Continentalists, 78% of us are women, and 40% of the team hail from various ethnic minorities in Singapore or in the region. And over the years, we have grown incredibly diverse. We have people ranging from different nationalities, religions, and also both queer and neurodivergent individuals. As Leticia said, diversity attracts diversity. We do not explicitly aim to achieve this, as a goal or a KPI, but we are very proud of how our team has become over the years. When you want to talk of your practice, people can tell whether or not you genuinely believe it, and if you don't believe it, then they know that you're just trying to check those numbers. But why us? Why are we the ones to be telling you this, and why at Outlier? One of the things that has happened to Leticia and I quite often is that we're asked to speak on behalf of the communities that we come from. A burden that we didn't necessarily ask to bear. For me, because I speak English fluently and my work is focused on Asia, I sometimes feel like I am asked to be a conduit for the Asian world. And my opinions have been asked to be given that will somehow be used to represent all of Asia and its practices in the database society. This is a burden that I did not ask to bear, but I sometimes feel like I have to. And frankly, the notion that I, one woman, can represent the voice of 4 billion people, the largest continent in the world, is ridiculous. And this might be a DBS problem.
Yeah, and our data shows it. We have a lack of representation from the global south, especially low and middle income countries, if we talk about it. And when I come to the stage, I don't come alone. I usually come with the responsibility of bringing so many people with me. And I don't think that other people, especially men in my position, go through the same. I am expected somehow to, being a white Latina, to talk about all of the Black women in Latin America, of the indigenous women, and being a cis woman, talk about all of the trans community. That's not what's going to happen. That's not my story to tell. But we know the tech industry lacks diversity. So if our numbers, at least when we talk about female representation, are already outliers within the tech industry, why not become the reference and show it is possible? As women founders, we have to do everything men do and a little bit more. We have to be kind and compassionate. We have to represent other women, our cultures, trust ourselves, decide where not to freeze our eggs, because the number 36 is coming up and everyone keeps pushing it to that. A show of hands of the women in this place, and maybe the women that are at home or other self-described individuals, how many of you feel that you are never enough?
It's like almost everyone, by the way.
Yeah. How many of you feel that the world outside is telling you that you are running out of time, but inside you feel like you're just beginning? Yeah. And how many of you are actually questioning if you want to have children or not, because you know your career will be impacted? So this constant questioning is often referred to as imposter syndrome. But we have some news for you. We don't believe in imposter syndrome. We think it doesn't exist. How are we supposed to be told our whole lives and be having examples of our lives that we cannot make it? But we are the ones that should tell ourselves that we are able to make it somehow. The math doesn't add up. Imposter syndrome is a propaganda that blames the individual on systemic issues like the patriarchy. You just said it yourselves. You never think you're enough. So this is a problem. We will never become whatever we want only by telling ourselves we can do it.
Sometimes this manifests in the stories that we tell of ourselves. I felt this most acutely last year when I attended a data visualization conference in Edinburgh, and I listened to a man present about his company, why it exists, and the work that they've achieved, and the accolades that they've achieved. He spoke really proudly of their first Information is Beautiful award win, a silver, and how far they've come in their journey. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with his talk. He had every right to give it. But what struck me listening to him then was, Contentless has won a gold in Information is Beautiful award and a silver, and many other awards at that. But it has never, ever occurred to me, even a single time, that I should be enough to pitch a talk about my work and my company at a conference like this. No matter how, Yo-Yo mentioned today, it's not a matter of how many self-help books you can read. But I'm proud to share that today I do, with a lot of encouragement from Leticia, of course. But women, we must tell a different story of ourselves. It's okay to be ambitious and to want more. Labels can sometimes be empowering, but more often than not, they are very limiting and they're not helpful. And they trap us in mindsets that, prevent us from doing things. And we should be, allowed to be crap at our jobs. We should be allowed to be crap leaders. And then, it's important not to be toxic or mean in the workplace, but we really shouldn't hold ourselves to unrealistic standards either. We all have feelings, dreams, ambitions, expectations of ourselves, expectations of other people. And as Leticia hinted at the start, before today, despite our close friendship and similarities, we didn't have a mini argument about this talk. We both have been having really, really bad, terrible year. And while trying to also be good leaders, get stuff done, and I'm doing a full-time study at the University of Edinburgh while running my company part-time. But I lagged behind, I dropped the ball, and we both got unhappy. And it was very important to us that I share this tidbit, because so often we only talk about the success and the good moments, and we don't talk about the moments of disappointment and of failure. And true solidarity begins with yourself. While it's important to be ready to change ourselves for the better, be open to feedback, be adaptable, we must recognize that this is honestly really hard work, some serious therapy stuff going on. And we can only achieve this with self-compassion and honesty. Feminism is recognizing that we are all just trying our best with the tools and the resources available to us and in the context that we live in. And before we can create such spaces for other people to be creative, experiment, test, fail, and try again, we must be able to hold that space for ourselves. As leaders and founders of companies, if we want to create the best work, the most creative work that we can achieve, we don't really have a choice in this journey, and we believe neither do you.
So this means growing as individuals, less cheering women, more sponsoring them, especially when they are not in the room, and not just women, but less represented minorities, and not just the superstars, every woman. It's less about talking and more about listening and asking questions. It's less about expecting individual recognition about the work that you have done, and more about understanding it is just one more step towards change, and we're yet to see the end of that staircase. And it's less about feeling sorry, shame, or guilt for yourself. If it's white guilt, if it's gender guilt, I don't care. Just take that butt out of the chair, get some of this load, and share it with us, because we're not going to be able to do anything alone until we realize that this is not about individual aspirations, this is about a collective change. So maybe in a few years, we don't have to come here to explain to you what an intersectional feminist data studio is, but perhaps we can try to be the best versions of ourselves and just refer to ourselves as data studios. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you. I love you very much.
Thank you.
We're out of time.
Yeah, sorry. I know you guys are really hungry.
We talk a lot.
Yeah.
All right, do you want to?
Oh, you're here.
I am here.
Sorry.
I'll just be back here.
I didn't
Actually,
see
let me
sorry.
give you this mic.
I have this one.
Oh, that's right, you do.
Yeah.
I forgot. All right, Zane. 0 minutes? Oh,
One
dang
question.
it. One question.
One question.
Are there people? Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yay,
Amanda said we can take 5 minutes, so we can take 5 minutes.
Thank you.
With agreement with you all. Okay, so if you have questions, line up at the mic. Who is my virtual Gordon? All right, do we have any questions from the virtual audience?
There's a lot
All
of cats in
right,
this
there are
conference,
cat
so I love it.
emojis.
Yeah.
I was very interested seeing the dog versus cat visualization there that you had going on.
Oh yeah, my team. Yeah, yeah. We identify ourselves through different ways.
I love it. Okay. Oh, go ahead to my left.
Hi.
Thank you so much. Really enjoyed the presentation. I think you've given everybody a lot to consider, and it was such a well-designed presentation. if we take a step back, what would your advice be for somebody who comes to this presentation and says, wow, like you really identified this problem, I feel really galvanized to do something? What's a step that they could do today or tomorrow? Well, today, why not today? What's something they can do right now to start implementing this as an action?
Okay, so to recap that question, taking a step back, what is one action that somebody can do today if they resonated with your talk?
Yeah, I'm going to let Leticia do this one.
I think that one of the things that people struggle a lot with is recognizing their privileges. I think the first thing is to look at yourself and try to think if this bothered you somehow and why. And even if you felt a little bit attacked, or if you felt that this was something that's out of your comfort zone, I would recommend trying to understand in yourself why is that and how you can maybe use that in a way to also change the reality around you. And then secondly, look at your team and try to notice the small things on the day-to-day, because maybe you won't have the same experiences that I did that were very, very flashy. But at the same time, I didn't realize I was going through harassment. And sometimes I still have microaggressions on my day-to-day basis, and I only see them days after it. So it's really about looking at how you can change those small things on your day-to-day towards building something bigger, and ask people around you if they're comfortable, and even voicing yourself that you made mistakes. Acknowledging your mistakes for me, and acknowledging that we all can make mistakes is the first part of trying to do any change at all.
I have some thoughts on this, and you can start small in your team. And first, one of those things that I notice is like, are we always asking the women to take notes? Like, do we naturally just like, hey, you do the notes in the meeting? And it also, goes into, for example, are women always doing all the creative work? They do all the design work, and then the men do all the coding work. I mean, these are the usual sort of dichotomies or, sort of stereotypes that exist, and we must resist and challenge them. But I also think that if you're in a leadership position, it's really important to identify, people with those less privileges in your team, because they also have ambitions and they want to grow, and to really not just go like, okay, now the job is yours, but to have frequent check-ins with them and support them and encourage them to get rid of this dumb thing called imposter syndrome. Yeah.
Great, Eli.
This is so good. Thank you guys so much. I wanted to build on that a little bit. So one of the themes was leaning away from leaning in, and putting emphasizing the person. But you also made a point of you want to a lot of this comes from process as well, and from more structural things. Are there and you also mentioned being very reflective about process and trying to adapt it as you go. Are there certain process things that you've done that have been impactful, or that have stood out to you as like unexpectedly like fun or helpful, or little games that you play to start the meetings, or things to build trust? What are some of the process lessons that you've learned to kind of build on this?
All right, so to recap that, what are some of the process lessons that you've learned through your journey?
There are a few there are many, but a few that come to mind right now is for me, when I have a really large team meeting, or when I know it's going to be a very mentally heavy conversation, I often just ask everyone to give me a number of 1 to 10 of where they are right now. And that immediately gives me a sense check on my team and how they're doing mentally. I also ask them to sometimes give me a number on how they feel with their workload. Numbers, data, people. And that immediately gives me a sense of how hard do I push this conversation? Should we schedule it for another day where everyone's in a mentally better space? And that's what I mean by process. We all have deadlines and we must get stuff done, but it's also important to carve out intentional space. And sometimes I would say, if we've made a huge mistake, or if a client is really like, on our heels, like pushing us to push out something in a very short amount of time, I will do my very best to push back on the client first, obviously, and tell them that we can do this, but you're going to cause my team burnout. But with my team, I would tell them that we do what we have to do right now with what we can manage. If it's crappy, so be it. The client asked for it, and if they're willing to pay for it, all right. But then I always tell them that we will have a conversation about this later, And with every big project that we have, we do a debrief after. We go through, everyone gets an equal opportunity to speak. And we assess what went wrong emotionally. A debrief, not about process, but how they felt about it. And then we fix it. Yeah.
One of the things I've learned the hard way was in the beginning, I really felt that I had to be friends with everyone. I think that there's that thing of like wanting to be friends with people. At one point, Ana, who leads our Brazilian team, told me like, I really need you to be my boss now. And I really need you to lead me. I know you want to be my friend, but I don't need that. And so that for me was the moment that I understood that there's always a power dynamics. It doesn't matter how much you are going to tell your team that you are available, that you are a person that they can talk to, that you can be reached. If you don't put in the effort and the work on a daily basis to be that person that they can do that and show them through actions that they can do that, but at the same time, they need to be able to use you when for the things that you are the one that can make decisions for. I think that there's always going to be a balance. So there needs to be a balance, but always understanding that no matter what you do, there is a power dynamic. No matter how Gen Z they are, they still will be afraid to talk to you. So when someone gets into the team, I realize that I'm not going to be able to do that right away, but I'm going to be able to do that slowly. And sometimes I even test the water, just like Ying does, by showing a little bit of more like humanity, saying that I'm sad, saying that I am not feeling well, telling that I'm going to take the day off. So those are parts of the things that I try to do, prioritize my mental health, discuss mental health openly, that I really see that has been baked into the process. And everyone now, if someone says, I am sick, a bunch of people go like, oh, take the day off. What do you need help with? It's not something that I do anymore. Everyone else chips in. So I think that that's something that we really have been able to build, but you can't run away from a leader and other like that kind of position. You just have to understand how to be more supportive of your team, and they can use it the best way possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, to my left.
Hi, my name is Jane. First, I just wanted to say thank you so much. I was like getting kind of emotional when you guys were talking, just because I think I felt seen in a way that I didn't even realize that I was like struggling with these things. I think they became so normalized to me that these things we're experiencing were hard, but I was like, oh, this is just normal. So I didn't even think to like care for myself in that way. So I just wanted to give a big thank you for that. My question was, I think a lot about, oh, when I have my own business or like whatever, this is the kind of leader I want to be. This is, how I want to build my team and all that stuff. But right now, as an undergrad student, as someone who's usually the most junior in the room, as a first gen, low income, woman of color, I fight with this thing where sometimes I'm in a room and it's like there's someone else who's the leader. And I don't like the way that, everyone in the room looks the same except for me. I don't like the dynamic in the room. I don't like these things. But I'm up against almost like fearing jeopardizing my upward movement with speaking out. So, and, I come from, an immigrant family that if I asked my mom about this, she would say, with so much love, sometimes you kind of just have to just, grin and bear it and just be like, okay, this is the world that I live in because, you have to pay the bills and you have to support yourself and you have to move forward. And this idea of waiting until you have that leadership position. But, sometimes it's like, it's just too much. So what would be your advice for kind of navigating those situations?
Okay, so what would be your advice for navigating those situations where you don't agree with leadership or you see something that you don't like and you're the one in the room of homogenous people?
So I think I totally understand your position. I've been in them many, many times. And oftentimes I would deny myself and deny my own truth and reality and my own personality. I remember that I used to be at a company that the name of the company was my boss's name. And at some point they called me Leticia and his name. And I just had a breakdown and I cried so much in the bathroom inside the client because I had like a realization that I was losing myself in that process. So my advice to you is, if you feel like there's no room for that, and if you have been trying, just get out of there and look for another job. And if you feel like you can make a difference in that place, but you have to go through some of the hardship and some of the things, and those are things that are going to be worth it at the end, Do it, but don't lose yourself in that process. Try to find other women or other men even that can sponsor you or support you through that process and mentor you. Don't be alone. There are probably other people like that feel like that way. You just have to figure out how you're going to find that into the culture. But don't toughen up. There are many opportunities out there. We tend to believe that the place we are in is the only option. It is not. You can find other places that are more representative of who you are and what you are.
I just have like two things to add to that. The first is, I mean, this is more of a joke. I don't know if we're like the best people to ask this question because we clearly were like, we're not going to live in these things anymore. We're going to start our own company. So I don't know if that's the best example. I'm also like a big believer of the Enneagram. Don't hate me, Gen Z is very well. I think of myself as a massive 8, which is a very outspoken, like challenge patriarchy and everything type of person. So I never really had like, you know, the quip that like, you should pick your battles. I'm like, no, I pick every battle. Every battle must be won.
That is such 8
And
energy.
she knows this to be really
Because
true.
I do it too, but I do it less.
So that is very much my personality. But how I've come to terms with that is to manage your expectations of what you can achieve and what is available for you. And sometimes it's saying that like, yeah, that job sounds really wonderful and it pays really well, but you know what? Screw it. F them, right? Like, I'm amazing. I'll go and find my own better thing. And it has worked out for me in the sense that maybe it's not exactly like what I imagined my career to be. Even listening to a lot of these talks and presentations, I have massive FOMO. We talked about it last night. And we're like, oh my God, these people have all these amazing opportunities. And then we have to carve out our own. But you know what? That's okay. Because I realized when one door closes, very often many, many more other doors will open. And sometimes when you actually act in solidarity, you realize how many people in the room actually think like you and speak like you, actually share the same anxieties as you do, and they would support you in that journey.
Go get your money, girl.
I am a 3-wing too, so I love that you brought up the
Oh, yeah.
I am a huge fan too. But yes, thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it.
All right. And then our last quick question.
It might not be that quick, but hi, I'm Leticia. I'm coming from Broaden College, and as a women's college, we have like so many of these conversations. But even there, sometimes there's still very Sheryl Sandberg, white feminism type talk.
Oh, yeah.
So I really appreciate that this wasn't that. So thank you for that. And then getting to my question, men get to talk about craft, but women have to talk about feminist practices. So I want to give you both an opportunity. Like, can you share about an exciting project that you're working on, or something that you worked on in this past year? So that you all get to talk about craft as well.
All right. So there was some shout outs there, and also this recognition that men get to talk about craft while you all were talking about feminist practice, running a feminist data studio. So this is your opportunity to talk about your craft very quickly.
Do you want to talk about something that you enjoyed in the last year?
I think this is really funny because another conversation that the two of us always have is how we don't get to do any creative work anymore. And like we're so busy just like running a company and like being a boss and like managing people and their feelings that we don't have time to do creative work. And our role really is like and we're like, there should be a space for people like us where you don't design and you don't code and you don't, but you know how to use the tools, and your comment is like, make this big thing bigger, make this thing smaller, change the title, rephrase it better, make your message clearer. Like that's really our job. And that's most of the work that I do, unfortunately. But everything in my team is shared, and I'm proud of every single thing that we put out. So go check out our website. Yeah.
Continentalist just launched a tool called Lapis.
Oh my God, yeah, I forgot to say. Yeah.
It's a tool on storytelling. You need no coding for it. Go check it out. It's subscription based, and I'm selling your work. Why? Why is it I'm selling your work?
Yeah, imposter syndrome. I don't talk about my work enough. But yeah, we launched the tool with some funding from Google News Initiative. It's called Lapis, which means pencil in Portuguese, but also it's shout out to Southeast Asians. Lapis is like it's a type of cake or pastry that we have that looks like a stacked bar chart. And the goal is to create a content management system that makes it easy for people who do not have the time nor the resources to create data storytelling in an easy way. So it's a one-stop shop CMS that's kind of like a mixture between Flourish and Substack. We just launched the alpha version to our first 500 users. You're welcome to head over to lapis-story.com and sign up to be an alpha user, and we'll be in touch. Yeah.
So we have many things, amazing things that happened in the last year. I'm really happy about them. I didn't really have the time yet to talk about them, but I think that one of the things I'm proud of is the fact that we launched an app that was focused in Brazil to try to help women understand a little bit more about how elective cesareans is a problem, and now we have a cesarean epidemic in Brazil. And that project has been adopted by UNICEF to fight the epidemic, the cesarean epidemic. And that project is being updated to English, so I'm really happy about it. And we're also working on a project that's going to be launched by the end of the year, where we're going to support millions of children, specifically in Brazil, Indonesia, and Jamaica. It's going to be our first international project, which is an app that supports people that help develop, that help through children's development, from both from playful things, both from like when they're pregnant until they're 5 years old, and that is targeted on vulnerable communities, and that's going to be connected to all of their systems, like to the government system. So that's an end-to-end project, and I think it's the biggest one that we're going to put out, and it's going to be out probably next year. So I'm really excited about that. But we also did VizHead, so we can have fun. I don't know. There's some other less. But thank you for the question. It was great.
All right. Well, thank you for this talk.
Thank you.